Learned helplessness. Now it's not a new terminology, right? If you were to do a Google search and type in learned helplessness, I think there's probably thousands of different articles out there, all right? So I'm not here to teach you what learned helplessness is. I just want to highlight that learned helplessness is that state that a person would reach in life when they've already made the decision that they cannot learn, they cannot grow, they cannot develop, they cannot mature. Hello, no course, no book can fix or heal anyone, right? Not physically possible, all right? But those from a place of learned helplessness have already decided and have learned that there's nothing that they can do to take ownership of their life. They are defeated, they're already beat, right? They're going to be forever reliant or waiting for a hero to come into their life and save the day. Right? Some people will be waiting a very, very long time, perhaps right through to old age. Don't do it, my friend, don't do it. Knowledge without context. Now, this is a great one. This isn't a cultural thing. Knowledge is irrelevant until it becomes a tangible output. Now, this is why I'm an advocate of applied psychology, not clinical psychology. I'm definitely not into deep breathing techniques because there's nothing applied about this. Unless we are growing in self-awareness, then we're not growing. You know, a wise mentor once said to me, incidentally, in my years of studying, I trained as a counsellor, and it was actually my counselling tutor over 12 years ago now, said to me, Kane, listen, you know, some people are going to come to you for counselling if you set up a practice, but you cannot counsel anyone in anything that they haven't first been trained in. And I thought, wow, that's quite revolutionary because it kind of undermines pretty much the entire discipline. You cannot counsel anyone in something that they haven't first been trained in. So what am I taking the lead in here? Well, I'm taking the lead primarily in training you. I want to help you to train your mind, right? Become aware of yourself, become structured in your thinking. You get to decide how it is that you organize these ideas inside of your own mind. Again, I shared this right back in the first video. But knowledge is irrelevant until it becomes a tangible output. So you can have as many opinions right now as you want, but do you know how relevant your opinion is if it equates to no change happening? It's not relevant at all. Your opinion is completely irrelevant. All right? Why do you think it is today that throughout the Americas, much of Europe, especially in the UK, there is an economic employment crisis? Because for many, many years, the education system as it currently stands in many parts of the world was put in place back at the dawn of the industrial era, back in the Industrial Revolution. This was when guys like Adam Smith and Andrew Carnegie had pioneered industry and had taken industry over to Americas. So the education system served a purpose, right? Governments got behind this and funded it. I'm giving you a bit of a history lesson here as well, so you understand this, all right? So governments would invest into the institution of education to essentially make, back then, an illiterate people slightly more literate and ready to enter into a workforce. This is how people got jobs. So fast forward, 200 years, now what we see is that the younger generations are still going through the same educational format, but there's no industry. Industry died decades ago. I don't think we're even in the era of education, of information anymore. I think we're actually entering into the dawn of wisdom. Because since the dawn of the internet, some people would say, right, we're now in the information era. Well, that's fantastic. But now there's so much information online. The question is, how do we decipher the difference between good, wise, helpful, beneficial information from that which is false, that which is unhelpful, that which is nonsensical? All right? So what we see today is many of the younger generations leave school, college, university with lots of knowledge, lots of qualifications, lots of accreditation, but zero skill and zero competency. And what is it now that organisations and businesses need? Businesses need skill and experience to justify salary. So you have lots of very, very knowledgeable young people today who are ending up leaving university after years, going and stacking shelves in supermarkets or working in cafes or bars or restaurants. All right. So knowledge without context is irrelevant until it becomes a tangible output. So I reckon King Solomon all these years ago was quite wise when he said, seek first understanding before all things. Don't seek first accreditation or certification. Seek first understanding. Understanding which you only get through application, right? Putting principles into practice. Unidentified opportunity. This is an interesting one. Some people will say some things like, I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to come my way. The interesting thing about opportunity is that it tends to come in disguise. It enters our life dressed in a pair of overalls, looking like hard work, which is why most people don't identify opportunity. Why? Because it's a cultural thing. Opportunity should be quick fix. It should be easy. Surely there should be an elevator we can take from the ground floor that takes us right to the penthouse apartment of life. Maybe I can just invest $50 in Bitcoin and I'll become a millionaire overnight. Surely, goes without saying. Building a business should be easy. Building relationships should be easy. No, it's not. It all requires hard work and sometimes many, many years of investment. And this is why people don't identify opportunity, because it comes looking like hard work and people sometimes don't like to work hard. So we resist challenge sometimes. Come on, it's part of our human makeup, all right? We resist confrontation instead of embracing it and growing. The opportunity that we each face in life comes through challenge and confrontation. Have you ever heard of the saying that iron sharpens iron? Come on, it's become a cultural thing in our times for people to take offence, right? The younger generations especially, I take offence, I complain, I want you blocked, I want you banned, I want you removed from the public eye because you say something that I don't like. But this is how we grow. We grow when we're met with perspectives and worldviews that challenge us and that provoke us to think in a more structured and more disciplined way, in a more mindful way. All right? There's nothing mature about offence. Offence is just emotional unregulation. That's all offence is. So next time someone says to you, you offend me, what they're essentially showing you is that life happens to them. They're not yet ready to take responsibility for their life. They're still in a place of infancy. All right? Undeveloped vocabulary. All right? Undeveloped vocabulary doesn't live at the opposite end of the spectrum as perfect vocabulary, because that doesn't exist. Right? In order to do life well, right, no person is an island. You're not an island, I'm not an island, right? Some people will be as bold as to say things like, but I don't need people. I'm just better off doing life by myself with my cats or with my dog or something like that. No, iron sharpens iron, all right? We grow in effectiveness and in awareness through life when we interact with people, right? The effectiveness of our life will be determined by how effective we are able to interact with people. All right? Now, this isn't saying that we become all friends with all people, because there are some people who we need to literally have some very robust boundaries between us, some pretty big and some pretty sturdy road guards. But here's the thing. We must be able to articulate our perspective, our understanding, our worldview, and our intentions clearly, if we're ever to be understood and not misjudged by people. Now, some people would say, but it doesn't matter. If people don't like me, that's irrelevant. Right, okay, I'm telling you here from teacher's perspective. I understand that I'm not a perfect communicator. I understand that I have biases. I understand that I have prejudices. Hence the reason I do my best to continually work on extending my vocabulary, because the broader the vocabulary, or the broader my vocabulary becomes, the more chance I have of communicating in a way that makes sense to not just you, but more people. This doesn't mean that I communicate in a hugely generalized way all the time. It means that I can communicate in a way that's vague enough for the vastest majority of people to be able to hook onto it in some way. All right? This is how I do my best to influence, by extending my vocabulary. One of the greatest investments we can make in life. It's one thing becoming mindfully aware, and then it's something else communicating this awareness. It requires effort, requires hard work. Where a person perpetually compares themselves against a perception that they have of other people. Now, I'm using my words right here, right? I'm using the right words. I'm saying the perception that we have of other people. Some people will say, but we're comparing ourselves to who others are. That's not what we're ever doing. All we're ever doing when comparing ourselves to people is comparing ourselves up against a perception we have of them, which may or may not be accurate. All right? We're comparing ourselves up against the assumptions that we've made of people. There's nothing even remotely wise about this. Can you see how completely absurd it is? Right? Some people do this. Right? Some people build their confidence upon the assumptions that they're greater than others. So it's kind of like me guessing what the lottery numbers are going to be on Saturday. Now, the draw hasn't happened yet, but I've just got to guess. Then I'm walking around all week. I kind of buy my lottery ticket based upon the numbers that I think are going to come out. And I'm walking around really confident, really self-assured, thinking, yeah, I'm going to win the lottery on Saturday based upon the guess that I've made. What then happens when I'm presented with a different set of numbers? Well, I guess my confidence and my boldness is going to not be so long-lived. I'm just saying that we cannot live our lives in a state of comparison, all right? Many people will compare themselves up against who they think other people are. There's nothing wise about this. It's just a roadblock. We're comparing ourselves up against our own guesswork. All right, do you see this? I want you to see this. Come on, wake up, wake up. A destiny attitude. The destiny attitude is the woo-woo attitude. It's that lackadaisical, apathic attitude you'll find in many religious groups, in some political groups. You'll find it in many mindfulness circles. This is the deep breathing brigade, right? Destiny is to blame for our life outputs, our relationships, and our results. Destiny is to blame. Say, for example, man meets woman, woman meets man, they fall in love or they get infatuated with each other for a short while, and then 6 months down the line, they get married. Another 6 months down the line, they get divorced. Then man and woman say, yeah, it's destiny, we just weren't meant to be together. Garbage. It's absolute dribble. Everything's a choice. We either work and invest into our relationships or we don't. All right? There's no such thing as destiny. It's just ludicrousy. All right? No one's destined to be anything. Destiny is just an excuse for not working hard and fully engaging in a mindfully aware life. All right? Destiny is escapism at best. All right? That's all that it is. So, ditch destiny, engage mindful awareness. Lastly, negative motivation. Negative motivation. People prioritize ease, security, and safety instead of risk. The problem that many people have is that they focus more upon what they don't want than what they do. So they end up saying, well, you know, I don't want to be let down. I don't want to fail. I don't want to experience this. I don't want to experience that, which then mobilizes them and deems them in a place of groundedness and stuckness. Why? Because when they're motivated by what they don't want, well, they're motivated then by clinging on to what they have, which is, you know, what they have. If they keep hold of what they have and don't take any active steps towards what they want, well, of course, they're naturally not going to experience any disappointment through failure. So they might experience safety, but they don't experience any progress, they don't experience any growth, they don't experience any fulfillment, any excitement, or anything else. 7 roadblocks to personal growth.